Welcome, everyone, to the special edition of Kiwi Talks. I'm talking to an underappreciated legend. You might know him as the guy who composed the theme for The Undertaker, The Ultimate Warrior, Stone Cold, The Rock, but he is more than that. I am speaking to Jim Johnston. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yes.
As we were speaking a little bit before we started this, I was telling you how much I've wanted to come to New Zealand and how it's a kind of a fantasy trip for me. And so someday, hopefully, I'll get to come over there, do some trout fishing.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever watch Lord of the Rings?
I did, yeah. And it hurt. It was so beautiful. Yeah. I'd be getting out of the storyline, looking in the back, saying like, "Oh, look at that! Come on! Let's get close up on the river." So, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't do it justice.
What we have here is Yellowstone Park. I don't know how many New Zealanders have heard of that.
I have heard of that.
If you come to the United States, please go to Yellowstone Park. It's like going back in time. It's just this whole gigantic area that's extraordinary to begin with. But what's really extraordinary, it was cordoned off by one of our early presidents, Teddy Roosevelt, who was very much an outdoorsman, and he started the national park system. And he just did this sweeping executive order and said, like, this is a national park now. And, you can't do anything commercial here, zero. And it's still that way to this day. There is no little spot where mysteriously you find a McDonald's or something. Once you're in the park, you're in the park, and it's like going back in time. All animals going around. I mean, really back in time, because you feel like an outsider, like you're intruding on their territory. It's beautiful. Really, it's something you got to see. But it's something I have to see is New Zealand, so I'll get there at some point.
Well, we'll exchange. You come here and I'll go there, and we can talk about it afterwards, I'm sure. So how do you go about your daily routine in terms of your music?
Well, I guess it's it's certainly different post WWE, but when I was at WWE, I could have been, there was always so much to do. I was never caught up. There's always more to be done. So there's a forever to-do list.
Right.
Post WWE, for the first time in so many years, I've had this period of time to be able to write whatever I want. And I have had no change since I was a teenager in my passion for writing and the number of ideas I have. I really, one of my biggest difficulties is I come up with so many ideas that I would never, ever in this lifetime be able to pursue recording all of them, which is sometimes a real frustration. And one of my real downfalls in the studio and part of the creative process is I'll be working on something, and while I'll do that, while I'm playing a piano part or something, I will be noodling around and say, "Oh, that's a cool idea," and it so captures my heart and mind that I want to stop and go work on that now. And a lot of times I do, and which means I've now stopped working on what I was trying to finish. And so I've got an incredible backlog of ideas and sketches. My little iPhone is filled with, I have a little voice memo thing I use. By each month, I've got hundreds that I lay off into files and clean it out and start again. And so now I have years and years and years of hundreds of ideas per month, times 12 months, times however many years. And So it's one of those weird things in life where it's a wonderful problem to have, and yet it's still really a problem because there is only a certain amount of time. And so I'm really trying recently, actually, it's interesting that you asked that or that we got on this track, because I've been really trying like the last month to focus and finish things. It's also particularly different when you're wholly independent, as I am now, versus you're working for someone, because they impose deadlines on you. You know, when you have a steady job, it's like, here's when you come to work, and we need this piece of music by 5 o'clock today. So looking back, I see that those imposed deadlines worked well for my psyche. And so now I have to create them myself, which has frankly been hard for me to do.
So safe to say you never get writer's block? Never
in my life.
That's good.
Never for an instant.
A good problem to have.
I can't wait to get to the studio every morning. I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm singing little voice memos in, or a lyric idea, and it's never ending.
So how strict were the deadlines at WWE? So, I mean, I've seen the snippet online. So when they first came to you about, say, the Undertaker, for example, and they're like, oh, yeah, he's a dead guy. That seems like a vague piece of information.
It was.
But how much time did they give?
The first reaction, of course, is if he's dead, he doesn't need a theme, okay?
But was that what they do? They just give you a small piece of information and you'd have to kind of struggle to extract more? I mean, was it management or Vince that would come to you?
Early on, it was Vince. Right. Because when he bought the company from his dad, you know, it was a seriously small operation. You know, it was Vince, his wife, Linda, I don't know, 5 other people.
Wow.
In a small, you know, rented suite of offices he worked in then. But the guy's he's a extremely driven dude. So he really ramped it up quickly. And so early on, him. And then later, his sort of right-hand guy, a guy named Kevin Dunn, I mainly went through him, but even then it was largely Kevin just relaying the information from Vince, or, you know, discussions about a character. Rarely, thank God, rarely directly from the character, from the wrestler.
Oh, okay.
Because that generally. And I don't mean that in the sense that I didn't like any of them or they were a pain to deal with. It's just that they didn't always fully understand the difference between music you like and what's appropriate as a theme for you. And, you know, it's no different, or the best analogy that I think most people can embrace easily is, when a director is putting together a movie, what he or she likes to listen to in their car has no bearing on what is going to be the right music for the soundtrack to the film.
Totally.
So, and most of the wrestlers would tend to immediately default to either, I'd like something like Stone Cold's theme, because they equate like, well, that made him a star, so give me something like that and I'll be a star. Or it's their favorite, you know, Metallica song that they like to work out to in the gym or something. I want something like that. And,
right.
And it's, I would always feel uncomfortable telling them or trying to explain to them that, you know, that's really not your character. And though I did not write Shawn Michaels' theme, it was a great example to say, do you think that Shawn Michaels goes to the gym and listens to I'm a Sexy Boy? Yet it worked as a great theme for him for years and years and years.
Okay. So were you actually approachable, though? I mean, from a standpoint, could anyone come and just see you?
Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no.
Okay.
No. I was well hidden away.
Well, which is what you want, right?
Half on my own, because it's pretty well documented. I've got pretty severe stage fright issues. So I am not a performer person. I'm a composer hidden away in the studio. And Vince is a control freak. He likes to, have things under control. And the last thing he would want would be having his composer out doing the David Letterman show.
Yeah.
It's like, get your ass back in the studio and crank out a theme, please.
So how long would the deadline be? So let's say with The Undertaker, how much time did they give you to actually create it?
I'd completely forgotten that. But back during that time, wherever the show was being filmed on Monday night, because there was really only Monday Night Raw at that point, a couple of magazine shows on the weekends, everything would be like vignette videos and stuff like that would be, the deadline would be a satellite feed that would happen, maybe by 7:00 on Monday night. So that was the deadline. And a lot of times I would be asked for a theme at like 3:00 in the afternoon on Monday.
What?
And you have to come up with something. And in defense, it would rarely be the final thing, but I'd have to come up with something and record it and get it on that satellite feed so that they at least had something to get this new character off the ground. And then I had a week to customize it. But the way things work there, that was always the reasoning. It's like, you got to just get us something to get us through tonight, and then you can take a week and work on it. But during that week to work on it, I'd be asked to do 10 other themes. So it isn't quite as clean as, you got a week to work on it. But so I'm really not, I'm not whining here. I like the pressure. I liked the, and again, looping back to the earlier bit, I think I'm seeing more and more now that one of the things I liked about it was that it forced me to finish things. And I liked that pressure because maybe it got me around this liability that I recognized even then, but it was sort of a forced solution. And certainly there were times that it was frustrating and you feel like, holy crow, I need just a little bit of a breather here. But
because you did so many things, right? You didn't just do the theme music. I mean, you did some stuff with film there. You did some of the video games, and you did like a bit of it. 5 or 6 films, major studio films, and with full orchestral scores that I did at either Air Studios or Abbey Road in London with orchestras there. And then there was a constant scoring of, vignettes and little miniature videos and miniature movies that would be part of character development. Like some little mini movie of Undertaker telling some story out in a graveyard setting or something, that kind of stuff. So would you like to do Hollywood films?
I would. I love working. My favorite thing really is working with not necessarily full orchestra. I love working with full orchestra, but I like hybrid stuff. But yes, I love. It's interestingly, most people would not look at my career and say like, "Oh, well, Jim does music to picture." You know, I think they would view it more like I write songs. But I would view it as like 98% of what I did is music for picture. Because to write themes, and I think the reason my themes were successful is that I wrote them like a soundtrack to the person. Like that person is the star of a movie, either the good guy or the bad guy. And like all those kind of themes, you know, Indiana Jones, dun 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 dun, you know, he's got a theme that plays to show that the good guy is winning. I treated themes in exactly that same manner, is that I would know I was on the right track when I was feeling something when I would play it. You know, when I would feel what I wanted people to feel. I always approach it, Reese, in terms of what do I want people to feel? That's the only thing I care about. What do I want you to feel when you hear this music? You know, the last thing on my mind is, will people be impressed with this guitar solo? You know, am I shredding effectively enough? It just doesn't enter the equation for me. It's all about the incredibly powerful, magical thing that music brings to the table in terms of emotion. And I think that's why a lot of my themes really worked, and why themes were really popular, because you feel something. Because you feel something, you care if the character wins or loses. It's like now you're vested in the process. If you don't care about that character, you don't care about the story, which means you don't care about the outcome. And now you're screwed. And in the television business, or the film business, that translates to horrible ratings and people not buying tickets. So because they don't care. They just don't care.
So have you actually approached Hollywood studios? I mean, because obviously your portfolio is very big and you can do pretty much, I mean, I think you've done pretty much every genre there is.
Pretty close. Pretty close. Yeah.
So I would think that would be easy in terms of like being like, here, look at this.
Well, I'm actually in the process now of doing that. But Hollywood is, you know, it's a very political place. Mm. And it's, you know, the people who are there have worked very hard to get there. And it's not as easy as just saying like, oh, I can do the work, so hire me. There's a sort of a respect that has to happen, that particularly if you're trying to approach a director, because they could have been working on trying to get this film off the ground for 10 years. You know, maybe they optioned a book 15 years ago and the process slowly began, and trying to get people interested and trying to raise money. And I know and respect how difficult that is to do. And so that's why I sort of come to that table with sort of a gracious attitude of like, the same thing I just mentioned is, if you think I can help you make the audience feel something for these characters, then I would love to help.
Mm.
Now,
I suppose
I would say I'd say I also come to the table absolutely confident that I know I can do that. But, you know, they have to think I'm the guy. Also, you know, a little bit of a problem with breaking into the Hollywood thing is getting around everything you mentioned, getting around the sort of the stigma of pro wrestling, which is not exactly the most popular thing in Hollywood. And so my association with that is two things. One, they kind of look down on it for the most part, even though behind the scenes they're asking for tickets to the events. But and the other thing is just a misconception of thinking, oh, he did all that. Oh, so why are we entertaining him for writing a score? Because he writes heavy metal songs, right? He must. If he was involved with WWE, that must be what you do.
It's interesting you say that, because I had a video game composer on here, and he pretty much echoed the same thing. You know, because he came from that world, he had that stigma that he just can't seem to get rid of, which made it difficult for him because he wanted to get into scoring films as well. And I suppose with the Hollywood system, it's all about networking and who you know as well.
Definitely, yeah. At least in terms of getting in the door. And I've been making some pretty good inroads. I mean, who knows? But did you know The Rock quite well, Dwayne? Well, no. Did I know him? You know, I mean, I have a pretty high bar in terms of saying I know someone or that I'm friends with someone. I don't particularly prescribe to the entertainment industry. They throw around, oh, we're incredibly close pretty easily, but I certainly had interactions with The Rock on numerous occasions, and we had good time together, and he's a great guy, incredibly, just absolutely the most purely chemically charismatic person I've ever been around. It's like just, it's an interesting thing over the years. Certainly met the big stars in the WWE world, but also have met some big Hollywood people. And it is amazing. There are some people that just have something that you can't figure out. It's just, it's a combination of you can't take your eyes off of them, and that they just exude a chemistry that you're attracted to. You just like them. I mean, it's just that simple. You just like them.
The only reason why I ask is because if you were to get into Hollywood films, I suppose he's probably knows a lot of people, and he could probably point you in the right direction, or put in a good word or something.
As he's one of the biggest stars in the world.
Yeah.
He is particularly difficult to get with. You don't just call him up, hey, Dwayne, you, me, lunch, dude. But I feel like if I could get to him, that will work out great, because I feel pretty confident that he would say, sure, I'll talk you around.
Yeah, for sure. Because how did you manage to write so many different genres, like in terms of your writing process? Because usually you have a composer that's more experienced or better at a specific style, but you seem to have done it all.
It's interesting, Reese, because I agree. Most composers, and even more so if they're a performer, tend to, they have their thing. They're, even people who are extraordinarily gifted, a guy like Sting or something. He definitely, over the course of all of his albums and early work with the Police, there's a range there, but there's also a style. and virtually all of what he does is in that style. He's kind of stepped out of it a little bit occasionally to do sort of English and Irish folk music and some projects, but and I say that because I'm an enormous fan of just about everything he's done. Now more modern day, Billie Eilish. Sure, there's a lot of different in the productions, but it's kind of, she's in a niche of, she's not like doing opera things for one album and then jumping back to, okay, I'm going to do my alternative pop thing again now. Where I fit in that, I have no clue, because maybe I grew up at a time when radio wasn't so segmented, and Spotify and everything, where it's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy as kids are going to a specific place to hear a certain kind of music. And then, they play you 400 songs that are basically in that genre of music. When I was young, radio, there was like just a pop station. There wasn't a rock station and then a pop station and then a, urban music Motown station. There were a pop station, top 40. And there, in the top 10 at any given moment, there could be the theme song from a movie, a Motown record, a pop record, just all sorts of genres that listening to all the time. And believe me, I'm just floating that as a theory. I think it's probably as simple as I love all kinds of music and I get all these ideas, and then you combine that with being with WWE, and they have all sorts of different characters that ideally require different kinds of music and international and world styles and stuff. And I love a challenge.
Because I don't think a lot of people realize that most of it was you, right? I mean, you played like every single instrument. I mean, what do you play? Drums, bass, keys? You play like sax, trumpet, like all that stuff?
Trumpet was not literally my first. I started with piano lessons, but played trumpet in school bands. And then once you play one horn, the fingerings on the rest of the horns, they're kind of in the ballpark. Then I learned to play flute. And then so fingerings on a clarinet and stuff, there are similarities. So each one builds on the next one. And then when I started recording, I would just love to try to record some other instrument, just because it was exciting to I'll put a flute on this because here's a flute. That was a good enough reason.
Yeah, well, because the thing was, I originally thought, I mean, way back in the day now, but I always thought it would be a group of people composing. But for a period, it was just you, right? Just you in your little studio, just doing it all. And then now and then you'd collaborate.
I rarely collaborated. They weren't really collaborations that happened. There were periods where we would go outside and I would give a theme to like a young, hot, upcoming band, and they would record their version of it, like they were doing the cover of something. And that was really fun to see what they would come up with and working with them. But it really never was a collaboration like we'd get together and, hey, let's write a theme together or write a song together. Yeah, I think I'm...
Would you like to do more of that?
I like producing bands.
Right.
I think only because I haven't done it, so I can't be sure. But I think maybe collaboration is not my strong suit because or probably the manner. I would love to collaborate if people could. I think the stage fright thing really enters into it here, is what I'm struggling to say. Is I'm not good at being in a room with someone else trying to write something because I'm so self-conscious that I kind of can't let go and do the kind of letting go inhibitions down process that's involved in composing, because you have to be willing to do stupid stuff. You have to be willing to say, like, oh, okay, I was going to use a raging electric guitar lead on this, but maybe it's an oboe. Maybe it's orchestral chimes. And I always feel very self-conscious if I'm in a situation with someone else throwing out ideas like that, because I just feel like, it's like, oh my God, you're a moron, get out. I can't believe you suggested that. And, but it probably would work, like if someone sent me some ideas that then I could think about, mess around with, send something back. Yeah, that would work great.
Has your stage fright gotten better over the years, though? I mean, because I'd imagine...
No, I'm sure it hasn't, because I haven't done anything about it. I mean, it isn't like I'm going out and playing coffee houses trying to have a breakthrough,
What I mean, I suppose in terms of the acclaim you've had, right? And how warmly received you've been by millions of people.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I'm like, well, is there a part of your brain that's maybe like, well, maybe I'm overthinking this? Or maybe is it still just...
Yeah. I am sure I'm an idiot. It's... My wife will say, I am still nervous playing my wife a new song. I will hem and haw and like, okay, it's not quite done yet. And the chorus part, I'm really not sure of the lyrics here, but she just gets so frustrated with me. It's just like, play this song. Well, just shut up and play the song. I'll make up my own mind. So, that's the nature of these kind of, I guess, syndromes, you would say, is they are largely built up in your own mind, that I have decided that there's real danger involved in this, and that I can't let go and just go out and, do a little concert thing and have fun doing it.
Well, I hope I haven't made you self-conscious with this conversation.
No. Hey,
okay,
you and I, holy crow, we're like, what are we, like 18,000 miles apart?
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious because
even if you decided, Jim, I'm running over there to knock you around right now, you wouldn't be here for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, that's right. Okay, so
I'd have time to move.
Okay, so it's more in person, so to speak.
More what?
So it's only the stage fright comes from actually in person. So if you were performing, say, over a Facebook Live or something to thousands of people, would that still cause you?
Oh no, I'd still be nervous with that. Maybe less with that, but and maybe less with that because I'm sure my mind would go, okay, because I could pre-record this and, kind of edit it to make sure I don't do anything really stupid or forget the lyrics or something.
Yeah, fair enough.
But then I would fight myself on that as well, in the sense that I hate when I see people on TV and, or like at the Academy Awards show or something, and they lip sync the song. It's like, sing your song. That's what I'm saying. That's the coolest part about it, or at least for me, is I don't want to hear it. I could care less about hearing it exactly like it was done on the CD or something, or in the movie. It's much more compelling, particularly if it's the person who composed the song. Let me hear it the way you wrote it, because that's really exciting, because that's when you can really hear the emotion of a tune and what inspired that person to write it.
So is there a part of you that would like to perform live, but there's the blockage there?
There is, exactly. There is, and yet it's the terror is the problem.
What if you started with like 2 people and then work up to 5 and and like a slow thing? Because I imagine you could easily get like a band together.
Reality.
You could get a band and tour around America, and just, I'm sure people would come and watch you. So I find it very interesting. Have WWE asked you to be in the Hall of Fame?
No.
And if they did, would you be like, nah, because of the stage fright thing?
No. If I said no, it would be because of getting fired.
Yeah. Okay.
Not because of stage fright.
Because I read that online. That's why I thought I'd ask, because I'm very skeptical about anything I read online.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole bunch of people that are wondering, like, why isn't he in the Hall of Fame?
It's, from my perspective, it's one of those kind of weird things where you're of very differing, conflicting views on something. On a practical level, getting outside myself, it is bizarre that I haven't been asked. I mean, it's like, well, I have to ask, like, okay, well, exactly what do you have to accomplish to get in?
Well, I find it weird because there's people like Drew Carey and Sylvester Stallone and things in the Hall of Fame. So I'm like, I don't get how they're in and you're not. It doesn't. Yeah. I don't know what the criteria is.
No, I don't think anybody does. But at the same time, I've got the emotional part, which is like, wait a second, where are we? You decided that to boot my ass out the door, and now you're saying we want you in the Hall of Fame. So, make up your mind.
Yeah. Because were you viewed as a contractor? Is it like, are you a contractor or?
Yeah,
right. Okay.
Different contract periods.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always found that quite fascinating, the system in terms of the work system in America, as opposed to, say, in Australasia. Because anyone can just fire you at any time, right? It's just bang, you're gone. Like, there's no kind of protection of your work rights.
So if you work for a corporation in New Zealand, they don't have to go through this, like, we have to warn you for 3 months, and then
that's exactly what
like
they have
you
to
just
do.
show up at work and they say, Reese, get out.
Yeah, well, that's because that's not the case here, right? So, I mean, unless it's some type of redundancy or you've done something really, really bad, there's actually a process that you have to go through. So
there,
yeah, in both New Zealand and Australia. So you can't just get fired. You can't just come into work and be like, oh, you're fired. Unless it's a redundancy payout where you get paid out like a month in advance and all that jazz, and you're given a specific date. Yeah.
Yeah, it's become really, really hard to fire people in the U.S. You have to do in a corporate type environment. you have to give them warning, sit them down and say like, oh, you're really doing, we're really disappointed in your work, and we're going to give you, 3 months or 6 months, I don't know what the time period is, to get better.
Right.
None of that stuff happened to me because being a contract guy, they just got to the end of the contract and said, well, we're not renewing your contract, which is just a different way of saying you're fired.
Which seems bizarre to me.
But it lets them off the hook, for any sort of procedure, basically.
Mm-hmm. So did you write music as a way to kind of cope with that? Did you go straight into, was this studio here? Did you have the studio at the time?
Yeah, thank God. I built it maybe 4 years before I left there.
Okay.
So it was great. And I was still working here. I was already working here part of the time. So, yeah, it would have been vastly more difficult if, I found myself, having to put together a studio. And, before I built this place, I did have a studio room in my house. But if that was my only thing for full-time work, that would have been a problem. So thank God in his heaven that I had this place already built.
Because music is so powerful, and it can be a very good coping mechanism as well, right? So
absolutely.
So I imagine it was very vital to you.
And there was definitely a sort of a divorce period where, it really is so similar to a divorce in the sense that even if you didn't want to be there anymore, which I really didn't, it's like, even if you don't want to be with this woman anymore, you still end up going through all the usual stuff of, sadness, anger, regret, all the, whatever it is, 10 or 12 psychological stages. And I definitely had some of that, but it was definitely the music that got me through. And it was really nice, as I said earlier, to be able to write whatever I wanted suddenly, and it kind of got me back to a much more pure form of remembering how much I love music, just for the music's sake, not for, what kind of living can I make from this piece of music, but just for the enjoyment of writing it and recording it and working on it.
So can you get lost in the music and lose track of time?
Oh my God. Every day of life.
What's the latest you've ever recorded or written music to? Can you get up to like 3 a.m. in the morning or something like that? Or is the wife like, hey, where are you?
I keep a relatively regular schedule. I'm an early riser, so I start early in the morning. And I would say I'm in here on average from 7:30 to 6:30.
Okay, that's a decent amount of time. And do you take any breaks, or are you just the whole time? Just
I walk back up
down
to the house to get my lunch, and then I bring it back down here to eat it.
Right. Okay.
That's the break.
Okay. Do you eat while you're playing though? Like,
not literally while I'm playing, but I'll still be doing some sort of function. Yeah. Well, sometimes I'm still playing, actually, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I do have to ask you, because my brother's a huge Ultimate Warrior fan, so I do have to ask you how you came up with that theme. Otherwise, they will be like, hey, how can you talk to this guy and not ask him that? So,
Warrior was he was pretty easy, actually, because he is part of what I would look for is a tempo energy from people. Like if it's someone I've never seen before, I'll ask if, is there any video available? I don't care if it was in some, small federation with him coming up and doing a high school gym or something. Because I just see a lot in how people move, their actions. Certainly, headline there is, are they a gigantic guy? Then it's going to be a slow tempo. Are they a smaller, wiry guy that moves quickly? It's going to be a faster tempo. But beyond that, some people have some sort of a kinetic energy. People who are like nervous, and so they, they're moving and they're their heads twitching. They're looking around all the time. That's going to give you a tempo. Warrior was boom. It's like a piece. It's like a rocket ship coming out from backstage, and all I had was I just picked up certainly not an acoustic guitar, but it was just that's Warrior. Is Warrior here? Yeah, yeah, he's here. And so then you just put something around it, and in that case, it's just incredibly simple. It couldn't be more simple, but that's who that guy is, and it really worked for him. And then he's doing the rope thing, and he was a wild guy.
So did you see a video of him actually running out? Was that kind of the information? Because how you said with the Undertaker, they just told you it was a dead guy. But with him, what did they actually say to you?
I must have, because I remember feeling like, okay, that I saw the guy and I sort of had, all right, we're done. I've got it. That doesn't always happen, but a lot of times it does.
Sometimes the most simple ideas are the most effective, right? Because it's what, 3 chords? Is it 3 chords?
4 chords.
4 chords.
In that little bridge section, I go up to a B flat to just sort of throw a little wrench into the works.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. It conceptually simple is the hardest thing to do, but also the most powerful. When I say conceptually simple, like that's simple. Warrior's thing is, it's really simple. A beginner guitarist could wade through a reasonably okay version of Warrior's theme. Undertaker is simple, but it's also, there's a complexity to it as well. It isn't like it's really complex chord changes. It's just simple in E minor. And it's a nursery rhyme, really, like how I wrote it, because it's the only thing I could figure out that sounded like what I wanted it to sound like. I was about to say it was the only thing I came up with that sounded like death, but it doesn't really sound like death. To me, it sounds more like sorrow. And I always found that was an interesting part of how I saw Undertaker's character. It's like we don't know what happened to this guy, how he got here. But it probably was not all good.
Yeah.
Probably some sad stuff happened to him. And then so when I did this little nursery rhyme thing, it just fit for some reason. And it's just such a simple. There's nothing strange going on there, but I played that and
so was that the original demo that you gave to them on the night, and then the week later they're like, okay, now you can add the organs and the strings, and is that how it originally?
No, I knew that was the composition, but I also knew that it's not a piano. It's got to be an organ and probably a choir, and then I needed something to open it up, and so I was thinking, for whom the bell tolls. And then I had to create a gigantic bell.
Is that the piece that you've probably remixed the most or redone the most? I mean, there's so many iterations of it, isn't there? I
would think, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably by far. I can't think of anything.
Well, he was there a long time.
Yeah, and yeah, wow. I'd be curious to know when I wrote that. I have no idea what you wrote that.
It's so iconic though, because I think of your piece for The Undertaker similar to how John Williams' piece for Darth Vader is, in terms of there's so many elements. So if you think of Darth Vader, if you take away one element, it doesn't work. So it's the combination of James Earl Jones, the suit, the breathing, plus the theme, right? And with Undertaker, if he's walking down with his slow motion walk, the lightning, the darkness with the music playing, and if you take away the bell, the bell, and if you take away the music, it wouldn't work. So it's amazing.
No, interestingly, I think there is a really strong parallel with the Star Wars thing. There's an incredibly fine line in that kind of stuff between, boy, does this work, this is great, and this is absolutely laughable. It's like, we're supposed to believe that this guy's dead because he wears a long black leather jacket? I mean, how stupid do you think we are? I mean, and yet, I think about it in the same light as Darth Vader, which is, it completely works, and yet the guy in the suit is not even Darth Vader. It's a different voice. It's a different guy, and who sadly just passed away. I understand.
Yeah, David.
The guy who actually played him. It also brings up something that's always been the biggest mystery to me about. Even though I'm not, and never really have been at all, a fan of pro wrestling, I will defend it in the sense of the biggest criticism is always that it's fake, which raises the question, so you thought Darth Vader was real?
Yeah.
You thought E.T. was like they actually found a real alien to play that part? Do you think your favorite TV show is real? That those people are really the cops that this is happening to? Within that context, it's all fake. It's all written storylines. It's all people pretending to be something that they are not, someone that they are not. And yet, in a singular fashion, for some reason, pro wrestling has always gotten singled out as being fake.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. It's probably because it's compared to other sports, I suppose. But it's probably why Vince branded it sports entertainment.
And also, in its defense, it has never really presented itself as another sport. It's always presented itself as being entertainment.
Yeah, sports entertainment, as Vince puts it, but for some reason people can't separate that. I mean, you see the injuries some of these guys have. I'm like, it's definitely real.
The first time I had a chance to stand in a ring, I mean, from then on, I was like, if anyone ever said like, oh, what they do is not really that great, they're not all that athletic, I challenged them. I said, okay, my dream for you is to be in a ring, and all I want you to do is by yourself fall down. Just fall down. And you will be crying. This is not a trampoline. This is not kiddie fun. And when you now extrapolate that out to a 7-foot guy is lifting you over his head and then you're falling down, it's amazing that they're not breaking their necks every single night.
Because it's like concrete, isn't it? In terms of, it doesn't give, or almost
it
close to it.
It has a global bounce, but a lot of that bounce is as much for the noise it makes. It's still a hard surface that you hit. Now, maybe it has a little bit of give, but that's like saying, well, hit your head against this stone. It won't be that bad because there's a sponge under the stone. Well, the stone is still hard.
Yeah.
And the ring is really hard. I can't imagine the stuff they do. It's staggering to me. Always has been.
Yeah. I definitely appreciate it. And I've never even been in a ring. So,
yeah.
But there's always haters, always people that,
I know. Yeah. Well, hey,
negative things.
But it's easy to criticize.
It is easy to criticize. Most people who criticize things don't even know what they're talking about, or have never experienced it personally.
Well, and sadly, it's so rampant these days where there are so many outlets for people to make their opinions known.
Yeah. Are you on social media, or do you stay clear of that?
I stay pretty clear of that.
Yeah. Because I tried to find you, and I'm like, he's not on here, and I'm thinking that's probably a good thing.
Yeah. It's a weird thing. I have this fan base out there, so and mine is not like, being Justin Bieber where you're recognized going down the street, thank God. But people who are in that fan base, like if I was to go regularly on Instagram, they will find you. And, they will open the door, or Facebook, I guess is a better example. And you'll be inundated with comments and some of them not so nice. So I've just decided probably just best to avoid that.
Yeah, I mean, given the fact that you get stage fright, it's probably a good thing that you're not super, super well known. I mean, do you get stopped anyway? Like, can you walk the streets of New York and would you get stopped now and then?
Yeah, very rarely. Yeah,
very rarely. Okay,
but I'm not. I really am a studio body. I spend most of my time here working away.
Yeah, that's good though. Given
I love it. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you still love it, and that's the best thing. I mean, I would have hated for the situation with WWE to happen, and then that you kind of lose your love for music as a result. But I'm glad that that hasn't happened.
Yeah, no.
Probably fueled it more.
I think it has.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I'm just started recently a project that I will let you be the first to know about.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to do like an EP of basically new themes.
New themes in terms of, you mean of like older characters or just completely new stuff, or?
Just completely new stuff, new pieces of music that would, in my opinion, be usable as themes. Because, one thing that hasn't stopped is my coming up with not just different kinds of music, but theme music as well. I'll be noodling around on the guitar or something, and you don't just shut that part of your brain off. It's like, oh, that'd be a good theme. Just like I had that feeling 10 years ago. Oh, that would be a good theme. Just some themes are good, are thematic. Things that have just a good little guitar riff, or just a certain immediately catchy vibe to them. Those can be extrapolated out into good themes. So I'm going to do 5 of them and just release them to the fan base. Is like, here you go, and
any specific date you kind of want to release it? Or are you just going to wait?
I wanted to do it by Christmas, but it looks like I'm not going to make it. So probably January.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. Well, I'll definitely keep an eye out for it.
Yeah. Well, now I will send a copy over so you've got one.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Would you ever do video game music? Now that that's the biggest medium in the world, I mean, it outgrosses film.
It's really interesting. I've never been a video game guy, player, but the music has gotten incredibly sophisticated, and its popularity is crazy. And I think it's still. I would love to, like, if there are any video game makers out there who are listening, here's a proposal. I would love to get involved for someone who wants to take a video game kind of the next step up to being a film or beyond a film, where there's much more. There's still a lot of focus on action and the gaming aspect of it. But I think what would make them even more popular is if there was a deeper emotional connection with the characters. Like there really was that the storyline was as compelling as the action.
Well,
Then
I think they are getting there. I think there's some games.
They are getting there.
Yeah. I mean, there's some very cinematic games now. I mean, you can have a cutscene that's like 10 minutes long. So it's.
Yeah.
I think it would be really down your alley because you have such a good sense of melody as well. You know how you like listen to a lot of films these days? They can have a good score, but there's nothing memorable about the score, like the specific melody itself.
I agree with you, and I think it's a missed opportunity because it's melody that attaches people to an emotion and a character.
Yeah.
It's you mentioned the John Williams, and all of his stuff is based on melody.
Yeah, that's why it's one of the greats.
To Jaws, it's only 2 notes. Dun, 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 dun. But everybody knows it, and everybody remembers it, and it means that something bad is happening. And it's, the next person would do that same film, and to your point, would have lots of percussion, and pounding, and it's like, and it would be tense for sure, but it wouldn't be as powerful because the melody just magically adds a level of emotion to it where it's almost a confusing emotion because you hate the shark, but you love the shark. You know, you're not sure. What would I prefer, for the shark to get killed or for the shark to eat these people? You know, but either way, it makes you care for all the people in this storyline in a way that just pounding drums and percussion and, you know, quote, exciting score music, I think doesn't really accomplish.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to wrap up there. This has been amazing, Jim. Thank you so much for taking time out.
Oh,
I know
my God.
you'd probably be composing right now if we were not having this conversation. So I very much appreciate it.
No, it's been great. It really is a treat when because something that sort of counters the whole stage fright thing is I love being with people and having conversations, but I like them to be about something. I'm horrible at cocktail party talk. You know, how you doing? You know what? Yeah, wow. You know, what do you do? Yeah, really, really. Where did you grow up? Yeah, you know, it's like I'm good for 3 minutes of that. Then I'm going to be running, screaming out of the room. So it's nice when it's like this. It just feels like you're having a conversation with a friend. It doesn't feel like you're being grilled or something. So
well, which is
I appreciate that.
I don't like the traditional interview format where it's too rigid. It's too
the Socratic method.
Yeah, well, like it
I'll
makes
ask
the
you
person.
a question. You answer. Okay, let me see. All right, number 5. When did you first play? You know, it makes it a little dry
and awkward, right? Because you don't talk to someone like that usually, and so
it's also interesting. My experience, at least, is when interviews take that angle. There's something nerve-wracking about it because you always feel like, okay, 7. Okay, 7 is, have you ever been accused of a crime? You know, it feels like, you know, where's the zinger coming in here?
Well, yeah, and it also, I mean, because of the day and age that we live in and I don't think news media are making the money like they used to, and they're competing with things like Google and Facebook, so they have to resort to these gotcha type of questions where they're kind of setting you up to answer a specific way, and it's like, oh, what are you doing? You know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The teaser on TV is like. Tonight, on 11 o'clock news, incredible behind-the-scenes footage of a very compromising scenario with the president. Watch at 11. You know, and you stay up till 11 to watch this salacious storyline that you've been teased with, and it turns out to be nothing. But they got you to tune in.
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Jim, thank you so much.
Thank you, Reed. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, that's the show, everyone. Make sure you share, like, and subscribe, and follow all of Jim's work. He is more than just a wrestling composer. He has a lot more to offer. So that's the show, everyone. Stay safe.